So I would like to welcome Mr. Jennison Asuncion, the co-founder of the Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and he's also the accessibility engineer at LinkedIn. So let's all welcome Jennison.
I'm going to be sneakily checking my watch under my jacket. The advantage of Braille. So good afternoon, everyone. A couple of quick things. Apparently, I'm joining a list of admirers and people to be thankful to Maha and to the rest of the organizers here at AUB for this great event. It's an opportunity not only for me to come here and be participating, but I can cross Lebanon and Beirut off my travel bucket list. I think my stomach is still recovering from an amazing lunch at Babel Bar on Tuesday. A quick caveat, while my name badge does say LinkedIn, the views and opinions expressed here while I'm here at the conference are mine and mine alone. I'm actually on vacation this week from LinkedIn. So there's that. I do, though, bring the perspective, which isn't in the agenda. I didn't add that there, but I co-direct something called the Adaptech Research Network out of Canada. And for the last 20 years, I have been involved in conducting research into the use of ICTs, or information and communication technologies, by college and university students with different disabilities and impairments. So we've been publishing and presenting on that topic for the last 20 years. So I've got some opinions. The other thing I want to quickly say before I get started to the audience members here who happen to be blind, I am holding up a Braille notes. While I love and live technology, I am here to dispel any myths that Braille is dead. It is very much alive. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. I want to cover, in the next 10 minutes or so, I want to cover 3 things, and it's interesting. I was listening to Yusuf talking earlier, and he kind of gave a good opening for what I want to talk about, which are kind of the roadblocks that need to be happening alongside implementation of technology and accessibility. There's more than 3. I had to narrow it down, but the 3 I'm going to focus on are awareness, empathy, and education. And what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about those, give some examples, but make them actionable examples for everyone here in this room to take away and to do stuff with. We all in this room predominantly come from here in Lebanon and the Middle East. There's some of us who are here from international locations. It's one of those things. Accessibility in the United States and Canada is a different place than out here, potentially here in Lebanon, from what I'm hearing. So I want to be careful and as I talk, to speak to some things that can be done realistically in the short term to help things out, to bring things to where we need to be. So whether it's in the Middle East or anywhere, I want us to agree on 2 things, first of all. Information and communications technologies are here to stay, and everyone who graduates, including students with different disabilities and impairments, must have basic digital literacy and be comfortable using a wide range of technologies in order to compete in the labor market. The other thing I want us all to agree on is that the impact of any piece of information or communication technology, whether inside or outside the classroom, not being accessible, is clear. It could lead to a student not being able to take a certain course. It might mean another student might not be able to register on their own. Or it might even mean another student might have to drop out altogether because the course of study that they want to take involves information communication technology that is not accessible. I'll also add that you can have the best technology and the most up-to-date technology in every room, and you can have the most progressive policies and legislation in place. But without the things I'm going to talk about now, and others, which I don't have time to talk about, the ability to adopt and to improve upon digital accessibility and inclusion, it's a non-starter. So let's get started. Let's talk about awareness first. So I'm going to paraphrase from the Merriam-Webster dictionary to say that awareness talks about knowledge and understanding that something exists. In my 10 plus years working in digital accessibility full-time, I can't tell you how many times I get this notion from people that, wow, we never thought that someone with a disability or impairment would want to use the website we're building or the mobile app that we've created. That concept, I know it might sound silly in this room of really progressive thinkers, but the reality is the majority of people can't think that the 1.2 billion plus people with disabilities and impairments around the world might want to use a website or a mobile app. It's inconceivable to so many people. One person who got frustrated about this lack of awareness was someone named Joe Devon, then at the time a back-end programmer in Los Angeles. He was so frustrated that he took to writing a blog back in November 2011. And part of the blog was he was expressing frustration that web developers didn't know the first thing about accessibility, and they didn't even know what a screen reader was. So he made a call to action and called for a global day of awareness. Little did he know that sitting in Toronto on a Saturday night before going out was me trolling Twitter and happening to see a tweet talking about his blog post. Flash forward to today, we are now in our 8th year having co-founded Global Accessibility Awareness Day. This happens the 3rd Thursday of May, and it's an opportunity for everyone, including everyone in this room, to either organize an event, whether it's on campus or somewhere else, open it to the public, have a conversation with a colleague, and raise the topic of digital accessibility and inclusion. So this is your opportunity. So the call to action here is, it's not too late to think of May 16th, Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And on that front, if I could just take the moment, if there's any one or number of people who'd be willing to translate some of our material into Arabic so we could grow awareness on digital accessibility and inclusion, please come see me. So again, March 16th, use your favorite search engine and look for Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Let's move now to empathy. I'm now going to paraphrase from the Oxford Dictionary, because there's no dictionary loyalty here. And it's empathy is the ability to understand and share feelings of another. This is not to be confused with sympathy, which is feelings of pity and sorrow for one's misfortune, which is unfortunately what a lot of people feel when it comes to people with disabilities. So in my 10 plus years working in accessibility, I find the best way to build empathy is to get a web developer or a designer, sit them in front of the computer, get someone with a disability or impairment there, and have them watch someone try and interact with what they built, whether they're using assistive technology or not. Let me tell you, that is the biggest eye-opener in the world. You could sit there and recite every web content accessibility guideline, hand someone a checklist, talk about the business case for why something should be accessible, but the real power is actually watching someone experience the website. Something that a number of us in the Silicon Valley, such as Facebook, Verizon, and yes, LinkedIn, do we operate things a little differently in each company, but we have what are called empathy labs. And these are opportunities for people, whether they're engineers or marketing people, anywhere within the companies, to come and experience what it's like to use different assistive technologies. A lot of people just haven't had that opportunity to use a screen reader or to use what's called a switch device or any number of other adaptive hardware and software. Again, this is building empathy. It's a little controversial because no one who does this ever expects someone to walk away and goes, oh, I now know what it's like for someone to be blind. No, that's not the point. Remember what I told you. The definition of empathy is, which is about building the ability to share an understanding. So that's certainly something that you all could do here. You could contact a local NGO with people with disabilities or impairments. Trust me, I can 100% guarantee you that they would be willing to volunteer to come in, sit with your people who have a website or a mobile app, and then just watch what happens. Oh, good, I'm doing good with time here. Let's move to the last one, education. Now, this one I struggled with, because I could stand here and talk about the importance of having a robust training strategy and approach for faculty and staff. Or I could talk about how important it is to provide education to students with disabilities when they're coming onto campus on how to use adaptive hardware or software. But no, I'm gonna step back and talk about something that's not being talked about enough. But we are graduating students of technology and engineering who have no idea what accessibility is. I don't need to tell you that we are growing at a fast pace right now in pushing out information and communication technologies. You know, Joanne in her garage could be working on something, and next week we're all using it, or next month we're all using it. The key here is that we need to start educating college and university students in engineering, computer science, any discipline that involves technology, fundamental concepts on accessibility. I want to point to an example of an organization in the United States called Teach Access. This is a partnership between big technology companies, academia, and advocacy to do just exactly what I've been talking about. Fill that void when it comes to teaching around accessibility in the colleges and universities to the very people who are going to be building the technologies of tomorrow. So if you go up to their website, which is teachaccess.org, you'll find a bunch of resources there. And they focus on, some of the things they've been focusing are on making sure that job descriptions for engineering and other disciplines actually say that a desired skill is accessibility, to send a signal to students, hey, this is something that is a skill that you want or need to have. They also have a study away program where they bring students in these disciplines to Silicon Valley to meet companies who are proactive around accessibility, to learn that this is actually a viable industry. So the action item here is, if you're a professor of computer science, engineering, or a related field, think about how you can incorporate accessibility into your course, into your curriculum. And if you happen to host a computer engineering program, which I understand AUB does, why not start thinking about how you can infuse accessibility topics in different courses, or maybe even create a course of its own and make it obligatory for people to take it. This is some of the only ways that we can make sure on that end, on that front, that we have people graduating who have an understanding of accessibility. So in closing, I hope my discussion has inspired or given you ideas to bring back to your campuses or to wherever else you work in the areas of building awareness, empathy, and education. It's a cultural change that needs to be taken, but as I said, I am convinced that without those three, and like I said, a number of other areas, adoption and improvement around digital accessibility and inclusion will be extraordinarily difficult. In closing, I'm happy to continue the conversation. It's easy to find me. My email address, it's my first name dot last name at Gmail. You can find me on Twitter at Jennison and jennison.ca on the web as well. I thank you for your attention. Shukran.
Thank you, Jennison.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
By the way, however you open LinkedIn, you will find Jennison. So, and now I would like to welcome Shadi Abou-Zahra. Shadi came all the way from the airport to here to be with us. And Shadi is from W3C Web Accessibility Initiative. Yes, of course. Next, sorry, microphone. Here it's coming.
Thank you. A little bit of an accessibility problem. Well, it's great to be back in Beirut. I really love the city. I love the Lebanese people, the Lebanese food, the Lebanese lifestyle, so it's really great to be back. Thank you all. I'm honored to be here. So, yeah, my name is Shadi Abou-Zahra. I work for the World Wide Web Consortium. So I'm a standards guy. I get very technical. When people get bored of all these discussions about standards, my eyes light up, and so I'm going to be building on some of what was mentioned in some other presentations, but also in Jennison's presentation. I actually really recommend the Global Accessibility Awareness Day. You can do anything. You can write a blog post. You can tweet about accessibility on that day. It's really just to raise awareness, and it's an amazing tool. It's so simple, it's so easy, and I really want to encourage here people to participate in that. I think raising awareness, particularly in around the world, is a really important topic. Anyway, let's get started. So, the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, is an international standards organization that really develops web standards. It was founded by Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web. We're about 60 staff people all around the world. I'm based in Vienna, in Austria, but we have folks in the US, in actually basically everywhere, in China, in Japan, in Australia, we have a colleague. So just 60 of us, so really we operate everything online by working online. And the mission of W3C is to lead the web to its full potential. Now, what does that mean? You might remember back in the days when the web was very document-oriented and very static, and you could only receive information. And then was this big hype around the web 2.0, where you can suddenly edit things and was much more interactive. Now you have this concept of software as a service. You have the web basically on everything. You now buy fridges or televisions or whatever, and they all are web-enabled. And I'm saying specifically web-enabled, not only IoT, but the web is still the predominant interface to the internet, also the Internet of Things. The web is the universal interface that allows access from different kinds of devices. Most mobile apps are so-called hybrid apps. That means that they use the website in the back end, they fetch the information from the website, and they use web technologies to render that. The web has also permeated all parts of our lives, be it education, be it research, employment, entertainment, healthcare, and can go on and on. So this is what this diagram is really trying to represent, how the web has become what we call, meanwhile, the open web platform. Tim Berners-Lee likes to describe it as each web page is now a miniature computer, and it's kind of a peer-to-peer flow of data. So the essential aspect of a web page, from Tim Berners-Lee's perspective, a web page is just an instance, but it's the information that you're communicating from sender to receiver. And that's a very important concept because that's where accessibility fits in. You're communicating, you're trying to convey information and knowledge, and the representation of that doesn't matter, whether it's text-based, whether it's video, whether it's audio. And this is the fundamental concept of accessibility, of being able to provide different alternatives, different modalities of interaction. And so this is where the Web Accessibility Initiative, which is part of W3C, came in. It was founded in 1997. W3C was founded in 1994. So only 3 years later was accessibility an integral part of W3C to make sure. So a big part of the work that we do is to make sure that the core technologies, so inside HTML, inside DOM, inside CSS, all these standards, there are accessibility features built in. What does that mean? For example, you have an image and you want to provide a text description so it can be read out loud by a screen reader. We heard earlier today what a screen reader is. It reads aloud what's on the screen. Now that is a feature that is built directly into the format, into HTML, that can then be later used. But we also develop guidelines to explain to developers how to use these features to build accessible websites and other kinds of content, as was mentioned today. So to illustrate the work that we do, at the very bottom of this illustration are these core web standards that I mentioned. HTML, CSS, XML, all these kind of technologies that you use to create your websites and your content and your apps. And then you have the developer side, and by developer we really have, we mean the big word of authors, anybody who creates content. And I'm going to come back to this point because it's really important when we come to the educational sector. And I'm going to highlight here that authors are really, or developers, include the non-technical authors, include the designers, everybody who's actually creating content. That includes us when we're using social media, for example, when we're using the content management systems. We are all authors of content at some point. So there is this process of creating the content, and that needs to consider accessibility. There's also the user side, and users access and interact with the content using browsers and media players, mobile apps, and sometimes also assistive technology. Again, we need to understand that interaction because the definition of accessibility is intrinsically bound with what the devices at the end, what the user has in their hands, what capability. And in the middle, at the very top, is the web content itself, and that needs to have certain kind of features to be accessible. So some of the guidelines that we have, and these are W3C standards. These are full W3C standards. Today, several times was already mentioned the web content accessibility guidelines. Now, this defines requirements. What does accessible content mean? So it has to have captions, it has to have text alternatives, and so on. So features specific to the content. And I'm not trying to add even more guidelines to your selection, Dr. Youssef, and more confusion. Actually, I will respond to that and recommend maybe one standard that might help you, actually. But the web content accessibility guideline is just one part of this thing. What's often really forgotten, and this is my favorite standard, actually, is the authoring tool accessibility guidelines. I think this is something that we really, really need to make sure that we understand. Authoring tools is anything that you use to create content. Now, when we are in a learning, in the higher education context or in the educational context, Now, most people creating the content, and this is actually true for the rest of the web, they're not technical people. They're also not accessibility experts. And I claim actually, they don't need to be accessibility and technology experts. They have their own studies and their faculty staff. They have their own things to worry about, their own research, their own work, right? But they want to publish that at the end. And the more that we can support them with tooling that will support them to create accessible content, a lot of that can be in the background by creating clean code, by prompting, saying, hey, you're publishing an image, what's the description for that image? You don't need to know that that's a WCAG requirement or all these kind of things. You just need the tools to support you to a large degree. Of course, there are the designers and the developers who are programming the forms and things like this. They need to be more aware about accessibility, but for the most part, we can get a lot from the tooling. And last but not least, the user agent accessibility guidelines. We love acronyms at W3C. So UAG is the acronym for that. Don't worry about that too much. That's if you're a browser vendor, but actually also mobile apps, because a lot of mobile apps, as I said, are miniature browsers. They fetch content, they interact, or they render it to the user. Now, how does that mobile app work with the assistive technology? Does it provide that information, or does it just put it? Imagine I create a fully accessible video and I provide the audio description track, I provide a caption track, but the mobile app just ignores these tracks. Then what's the point of providing these information? Anyway, I'm running out of time, so let me move on with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Somebody in industry described it as the Big Mac of accessibility. I don't know if I like that comparison, but it's really one of the standards that's getting a lot of the spotlight, which is good because it's driving accessibility, but as I said, we need to think about the other components as well. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines is built around 4 principles. And if you remember just these 4 principles, you're gonna have most of what you need already. Think about your content. Is it perceivable? Perceivable with different senses. So if I can't see the content, can I hear it? Can I touch it through braille, through tactile? So how's the content able to be perceived through different senses? How operable is the content through different kinds of devices? Can I use it with a keyboard? Can I use it using voice commands? Because I'm not able to use a mouse. Things like this. How understandable is your content? I think we've all come across websites that are so difficult to understand. And how robust is it? How well does it work with different devices? These 4 principles, if you remember them, and then it breaks down under guidelines and success criteria and so on. Tomorrow there's a session at 11:30, I believe, where I'm going to go deeper into these guidelines and explain them a little bit more. So if you're interested in learning more about these success criteria, tomorrow at 11:30, small advertisement there. But WCAG 2.0 has also been adopted as ISO standard 4500. So it is an international standard. If your policy is not able to refer to W3C directly, because it's not a recognized standards body in your legal context or whatever, that does happen, you have an ISO number. You can refer to it as an ISO standard as well. It's adopted in many other countries around the world. It's the Japanese industry standard, 8.4 something. It's adopted in Spain also as a national standard and so on. But most importantly, and I think this is one of the things, it's fully included in the European standard EN 301549. Yes, I love standards, there are lots of numbers. But this is really the one standard that I think you should really, really look at, because that standard addresses accessibility of ICT overall. It includes WCAG for the web content part, and it includes, it uses WCAG to ICT for the electronic documents and for the software parts. It also includes aspects of hardware and bidirectional communication, and it's aligned with the US Section 508, which has also adopted WCAG 2.0. So we're at a really good point here where we're having more harmonization, and I think this is one of the things that we really have to be careful of. In the past, we've seen that when countries start with accessibility, there's a bit of a not invented here syndrome, and they try to develop their own standard, rather than building on existing standard and benefiting from the tools that exist, from the literature, from the expertise, and so on, being able to accelerate much quicker by building on existing standard. Clicker doesn't always work. I just want to, last point to make very quickly, no, that's fine, yeah. Is WCAG 2.1 has just been, well, in standards term, just been released in June 2018, so it's very recent. This includes improvements for people with cognitive and learning disabilities, for people with low vision, and for people using mobile devices. So it's got some really, really good improvements. There is intentions to work on a WCAG 2.2, so this is here an opportunity also for people in other regions to give us feedback. How well does that work in your particular context? What improvements do you think the standards need? And this has also been, WCAG 2.1 has also been adopted in the latest version of the EN 301549. So with EN 301549, you really get the latest of what you need here. Anyway, as I said, tomorrow we're going to go into more detail about this standard. And for now, thank you.
And now I would like to present Dr. Celine Merheb from the American University of Technology.
Good afternoon. When I 1 month ago proposed or submitted my proposal to this conference, I was just focusing on technology and learning. And then after reading about the subject a lot and thinking about my classes as a professor, I prepared a PowerPoint for this presentation that I will not use today, even if I used the rules and regulation that Mrs. Maha sent me. But I think that it's better to try to link my experience as professor and what I've heard today. So I present myself. I'm Dr. Celine Merheb Ghanem. I'm a senior lecturer at AUT and other universities also. And I teach human rights classes and civic engagement and other courses, of course. So, and the subject of today was my human rights class. What we've noticed as professors throughout our experience in the last few years is that universities have decided to innovate the learning experience by choosing innovative techno-pedagogy practices, with few of them opting for developing a distance education environment. What I've noticed today is that I still have lots of obstacles as a professor to overcome in my class, in my face-to-face classes, but also in my online class. So, as some persons explained in the previous sessions, each day we have to face obstacles which make us all disabled. Professors, administration, higher education institutions, and of course professors. Techno-pedagogy. What is techno-pedagogy? The leitmotif of this new involvement is to develop a new educational tool. From one side, to find new ways to improve the quality of teaching practices, of course, our learning outcomes, our syllabi, etc. And from the other side, to make higher education widely accessible to a more diversified public. So techno pedagogy is a large tool chest in which institutions, but also professors and students of all abilities meet their needs. If internet offers many resources for a bolder education, and if technology makes all teaching supports easily accessible, then higher education should be envisaged as a vector of inclusion. And professors should represent an actor of change through their involvement in classrooms. Today, I will present COIL, which is the Collaborative Online International Learning, which is a virtual pedagogical approach used simultaneously in my class and several classes at AUT with the State University of New York in US. So COIL is this collaborative online international learning program centered on two things: team-based learning first in class, a team-based learning model, and it is also committed to foster a multicultural exchange through the innovative use of technology. So internet and other tools on our phones or through the internet, through e-learning, for example. I'll explain also the challenges, but also the process of COIL, of building a COIL exchange. So let us present the challenges to overcome in this context of COIL. But let us be positive. I base my challenges more on the three facilitating factors that I need in my course. So the first thing is motivation. The motivation of all participants, the professor first, of course, the administration, and the students working in class or online. This is the first factor. The second facilitating factor is to know how to build an interdisciplinary content. So considering that we're using two courses in class and two courses that are quite divergent. For example, I teach a class of human rights at AUT and I'm exchanging with a class online on English communication or world affairs or something like introduction to sociology. So I have to manage two courses also at the same time, plus technology, plus the access to all my students online and face-to-face to this course. The third facilitating factor is the diversified technology tools that I use in my classroom. So, for example, e-learning, Moodle or Blackboard, which is almost accessible also, built on accessibility. Some other online platforms, or for example, Facebook or Zoom applications, so we can exchange directly with the classes outside Lebanon. VoiceThread, if it's for an online course, or for example, the videos that are submitted by my students should also be accessible for the others by using, for example, subtitles in their presentation. So I've learned all along my teaching experience that students of all abilities and backgrounds want classrooms that are inclusive and convey respect. Classroom settings may present certain challenges that need accommodation and consideration. And I think that using the COIL program might create an appropriate environment for the whole class. In fact, the simultaneous use of team-based learning and technology help hidden the difficulties faced by students and better address their individual needs. Let me explain the process of COIL. So first we have this preparatory phase in which the project is initiated by professors following weeks of consultation and then negotiating and establishing a common syllabus. The second phase is the adaptation phase, in which both classes will adapt. So they are divided into groups. They are assigned the same subject, and each group in class has to build a kind of correspondence through technology tools with the partners from the other group, through a team-based learning in class, through the use of videos or PowerPoints also in class. They are advised so to use technology so we can meet and discuss about our joint projects. The third phase is a common project development phase. The aim of this project is to enable the students to acquire personally new knowledge and skills. While working together through this TBL, team-based learning, each student becomes a support to other students. So here, accessibility is not just about using this technology, but also to let the students get involved with each other inside the group. They usually use, for example, typed or audio comments integrated on a Facebook closed group page or other tools like e-learning forums, since it's also accessible. The last phase, since this project is always an adventure for the professor, especially, lasting a big part of the semester, around 60 to 70% of the whole semester, it is enriched by trials and errors. In order to evaluate this experiment, it is important for us as professors and administration to inductively analyze 3 products: exchanges between students through technology, the steps of the common work that have been done in class, and third, an evaluation survey to see if we met the needs of all our students. So, the challenges, this project is a challenge for us as professors in views of bringing it to a success, to a successful end, and a challenge also for students. So it doesn't make it easy for the students or neither the professor. We must concede that this dynamic is not without gaps and needs arrangement. We must therefore consider other activities that makes our class more accessible, and why not other technological tools that we might discover today and tomorrow, hopefully. I'm almost done. I have my conclusion. Where's my conclusion here? Sorry. Where's my conclusion? 1, 2, 3, 4. It's here. Okay. So education system becomes now spectator of the shift from the traditional teaching methodology to digitizing the pedagogical approach through technical devices. This means that such a transformation is not only increasing the potentiality of the professor, but also spreading the information to students, making them competitive actors on the international arena. In today's world, students of all abilities need to keep on updating both their skills and knowledge to meet the challenges of everyday life. This is why an innovative use of technology can potentially give them the opportunity to access a wider education system. Knowing that the learner is no longer passive, every instructor should know how to use effectively technology, pedagogy, and course content at the same time, and they must understand their role in this technologically oriented education and inclusive classrooms. Technological integration has the potential to bring change and equity in the education process, keeping in mind that if in higher education accessibility is a question of technical compensation, inclusion is above all a matter of institutional and professor's choice. Thank you.
So I would like to welcome Jeremy Seda. He is from North Idaho College. He is the IT Accessibility Coordinator over there. And they have done quite a lot in this, on this front. So we're happy to get some of his experience. And I just want to highlight that Jeremy, I met Jeremy on Educa's accessibility group online like a year ago. And he was helping me since then for no reason. just God's will. So thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for the help throughout last year. Thank you for coming from all the way from the US. And the stage is yours.
Use the other hand mic. Well, thank you for the introduction. That was awesome. Actually, I'm going to follow in suit, and this is truly from the heart. I really want to, again, thank all the people organizing this, and especially Maha. So let's give it up for them. There it is. Okay. So I titled this, Make Everything 1% Better. And on this title slide here, I actually have a picture of Lake Coeur d'Alene. I hope I'm saying that right. But this is actually the setting of where North Idaho College is located in Idaho, in the US, in the northwest of the United States. I'm going to try to use this clicker. Or is it just slow? Okay, great. Thank you. Let's try this again. My apologies. Is there a lag? I have jokes. That wasn't one of them. There we go. Stay. Okay, so I'm the IT Accessibility Coordinator at North Idaho College, and I've been doing a lot of good work there in just anything I can do to make the college more accessible, both for students and staff and faculty. I am a professor of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and from a show of hands, how many people know something about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here? Great, I love it because I get like maybe 2% of the audience, and so I get to give you these really good descriptions. One is, it's like folding laundry, but with somebody in it. Okay. The other one is, it's involuntary yoga. But in all honesty, it's a beautiful art where you're actually trying to grapple with somebody, get to a dominant place, submit them, and by manipulating a joint or a choke, and it's all friendly. Get the person to tap or submit, and then you start all over again. So it's this repetitive cycle of learning. So what does that have to do with anything related to accessibility? Sorry, I got to... So the BJJ life, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is a paradigm where you could say, I did it, I'm here, I'm finally as good as I'll ever be, I'll never be better than this. And it's just not true, it's continual learning. I can teach a technique and have to accommodate that technique to different body styles, injuries, and disabilities. And the cool thing about that is that I often start using that modified technique in my own game because it ends up being better. I need to work with other people, making them better, if I myself want to get better. And it's a life of continual learning and improvement with no definitive endpoint. Kind of said that before. So this implicit understanding that it is a journey is a characteristic that I see shared very much with accessibility and universal design. Okay. So that's kind of why I said, yeah, I came up with this quote, I invented it, make everything 1% better. batteries are going. I can do it, man. Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, James Foster actually says that too. I'm kidding, that's who I got it from. This guy here in this picture, James Foster, is a two-time black belt champion in jiu-jitsu. And the quote basically, he told me one time was, you could be in a tough position in jiu-jitsu, and if you try to focus on how to make this 100% better to get out of this bad situation, you're probably going to fail. But if you can see how to make it 1% better, you can probably see how to make it 2% better. If you can see how to make it 2% better, you can probably see how to make it 5% better until eventually you're out. And it's very applicable to what I do with my job at NIC is I just try to move that a little further. I just try to raise advocacy just a little bit more. And then I'll find new ways to actually further those efforts. So I really wanted to kind of share some of the examples at North Idaho College, since this is a leading practice. And not that this is the way to do it, this is a way to do it, and I really hope you guys take some of these ideas and say, hey, Jeremy, there's actually a better way than what you presented in Lebanon. That's my dream, is that you guys find something better that I could then glean from your experience. Please work. Yeah. So maybe I just need to hit the space bar, give it 30 seconds. Okay, so I'll talk about these universal workstations. So we had a lot of facilities where we would have computer labs or these classrooms with multiple computers set up. And we might have a workstation that is set up for people with disabilities. However, in the computer lab settings, there was kind of a stigma that was associated with those particular machines. And the stigma was more or less that you had people without disabilities looking at them and saying, well, that's the handicap workstation. I don't think I can actually use that. Just like we see handicap spots, that we're not allowed to use those by law if you don't have a handicap sticker. And then you have people with disabilities who might think, I don't want to self-disclose by using this machine. So you have the people without disabilities and the people with disabilities both not wanting to use the machine. Well, that doesn't do anybody any good. Okay. So hopefully that'll advance on its own. So what we did is actually took just our general workstations and outfit them with a bunch of really good hardware to give them options. So in the picture you can kind of see we have an ergonomic keyboard. There's a high contrast keyboard, and we also have like a wireless keyboard / touchpad to interface with. You have a mouse, a trackball, and another device called a Tobii eye tracker. So it allows you to actually interact with the computer for the mouse and the keyboard using your eyes. And it's using the Windows, some of the accessibility features with Windows. And actually, also, I'm pretty proud of the desk pad because I came up with that, designed it and everything. I didn't like the idea of having a booklet of instructions on the desktop because, one, people won't use it. Two, it's going to get destroyed. And then three, ultimately ends up in the garbage. The desk pad was a nice way to put the instructions out there for everybody. that's going to last, and I can update it whenever I need to. Yeah, let's see. Might be because it's running off the USB. Yes, there we go. Yeah, it's just running desktop. Okay. So while we're getting this loaded from the actual hard drive, I want to cover another really good success that we had. I'm actually organizing an event called Pave the Way to Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And I have another story I can tell you about that. But we're doing our event on April 23rd, a few weeks ahead of the actual GAD event, which is on May 16th. And we wanted to have these event passports like I'm sure a lot of people have seen. Good, I get nodding heads, that's perfect. Yeah, because we want everybody to go around and get to visit with all the exhibitors. So we printed this out, and I was so proud because I made these stamps that had these little accessibility icons, which were so cool. But as we move forward with these meetings with the committees and whatnot, people said, well, how's this experience going to be for blind people or people with low vision? And ultimately, we came up with the idea of using, a tactile way to actually have this passport where it's using swell form paper, and people can actually touch and feel what booth they need to go to. It's brailled. And where are we at? If you could advance it. So we have these actual tactile event passports, and I got to share this story because it was something that, again, going back to what a lot of people have said today, doing the right thing. We had these tactile passports, and and we thought of initially just printing out a bunch of these for, say, if somebody was blind, low vision. And then somebody said, well, why don't we just use the tactile version for everybody? And then one of the other folks that was in the committee who's blind says, I can count on one hand how many events I've actually gone to where I didn't have to ask for something special. And that was pretty much my motivation to ensuring that everybody got a universal passport. We don't have to give anybody a different one. Everybody gets the tactile version. So doing that, I've actually made it a little easier for people with disabilities to actually get the same experience. And then for those that don't need the tactile feel of that, it's a great advocacy piece. Still not going? There we go. So here's the paper version. And on the next slide, you'll see the tactile passport. And the other thing is we use these little stickers, and I got to use my stamps that I was so proud of, so that somebody who's blind, low vision could still feel, oh, I can feel this icon, and there's a sticker next to it. I'm good to go. So I think since we're having issues with my PowerPoint, I'll just try and kind of riff the last slides if I could. Oops. It's good, but I'll... And no, it's event. The last example I want to give you is an event poster for my Pave the Way to GAD event. And I, again, had this really cool idea of, hey, on the bottom, I want to actually have these business card sizes pieces of paper with the same information they could tear off, take with them, or whatever. Some people probably just throw them away. But again, I felt like we needed to have those brailled. And so I went through multiple iterations where, hey, we can use these plastic labels. Found that they ended up curving the paper. I don't like that. It's not good enough. Used swell form paper and cut them up the same size. Pasted on the back. I'm like, I don't like that. It doesn't look professional. I actually found one of the best ways to do it was to hand braille it. Well, that's great. And for any of you who actually have done the hand braille, you'll know it's extremely time consuming. especially for somebody who doesn't do it very well. And it's not forgiving of errors, okay? So where I'm going with that is ultimately we did some of these that we had the swell form paper on the back of them, some that were hand brailled. And I came up with an idea with a bunch of people, again, from the committee. We're saying, why don't we 3D print some plates that will do the same thing as the hand brailing and just basically presses the braille. And really, it shouldn't take but maybe 15, 30 seconds for every one of the posters. And so again, just pushing that idea of making everything 1% better got us to that conclusion. It's just not thinking, well, that's good enough. We got braille on there, that's good, that's all we needed to do. No, to me, it has to look professional. I'm embarrassed if my name's tied to something that isn't the best that it could be. Okay. Great. So my closing thoughts here, I'm going to throw two actual quotes at you that, hey, I did come up with, and I can say that because I had some very frustrating meetings before I came to Lebanon, and these were my arguments that kind of left everybody a little bit quiet. I'm like, cool, I'm taking that to Beirut with me. Yeah, the first one is, you don't need accommodation request to do the right thing. That's what we've been hearing all morning, right? Okay. And another situation, I don't look at accessibility as a normal problem because I don't want a normal solution. It's a creative, it really is a creative challenge, and it needs to have a creative outcome. And again, make everything 1% better. So if you have any further questions, again, my name is Jeremy Seda. My address is firstname.lastname@nic.edu, and I am on Facebook.com/SEOA11Y and Twitter.com/SEOA11Y. And thank you for your patience.
Hello. Okay, so I just want everybody to know that Jennison and Jeremy are conducting a workshop tomorrow at 11:30. So those who would like to learn more from them, go to that workshop tomorrow and be there. And now I would like to introduce Souha Bourjeily, the Corporate Communications Manager at Alfa.
Thank you, Maha. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. I'm very humbled to be speaking after those inspirational speakers. Yet, I will be very glad to share with you Alfa's experience, and I hope it will be a beacon of hope in a not-so-positive context we are currently going through in terms of inclusion. Okay, I will start till they prepare the slides. Okay. So I will be talking to you about Alfa's journey with people with iron will who have contributed to Alfa's growth on both the financial and the human level, and who taught all Alfa family members a lesson in determination, courage, and outstanding achievement by being a living testimonial to all of us that not all heroes necessarily wear caps. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Our first colleague, sir, okay. I can move it with this one, okay. I would like to recall Dr. Asfour's last sentences. He said we have to work towards inclusion because first it's the right thing to do, and second because it's in the law. At Alfa, since its inception back in 25 years ago, the concept of inclusion was introduced with our first colleague, whose name is Layla Habib. She was recruited in the first year when Alfa saw the light. So this concept was embedded in the culture. It's in our DNA. And in 2017, it was like the normal ending of the beginning of a new story when we registered the denomination people with iron will as an IP intellectual right, yet we call everyone to use it. We are a firm supporter to the UN. We are firmly committed to the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, and we are firmly committed to SDG number 3, good health and well-being, SDG number 10, reduced inequalities, and SDG number 9, innovation, industry, and infrastructure. All these goals contribute to the inclusion and advancement of the rights of this segment of the population. From Lebanon to the world, a call to adopt people with iron will. In 2017, because we believe in inclusion and in partnerships, during an event where we have gathered all our NGO partners, our CEO, during a Chain of Love event, called for the new nomination on the national level, people with iron will. And this call was repeated in 2018 from the UN headquarters during the UN Leaders Summit, and where he called all participants to stop using the normal appellation of people with disabilities or special needs to people with iron will. We have at Alfa an equal opportunity program that will be detailed later on. I will skip it now to move to the second slide. We see the person. As a corporate citizen, we create opportunities and solutions to the challenges of our community. As I have said, we have been recruiting people with iron will since Alfa's inception, and we have exceeded currently the quota stipulated by the law since 2012, with 3.3% of our Alfa population as people with iron will. We are very proud to have 3 colleagues in managerial position. Please, the screen has 3 colleagues in managerial position. One of them works in the finance department, and you saw her picture. Her name is Layla Habib. One of our colleagues is Ilyas Kassab, who gave his testimonial a few minutes ago. And another colleague who's the first Alfa store leader in Jbel. His name is Ilyas Rahbani. We work on equal recruitment opportunities. Our recruitment policies guarantee equal employment opportunities, and the candidates may apply to various positions in different departments based on their skills, experience, and educational background without any kind of discrimination. The selection is grounded on individual merits of candidates. How did we work on the inclusion and the diversity in the workplace? We have tackled each different need separately. For example, for people who are visually impaired or legally blind, we gave them tasks that do not require lengthy visual focus. We have adopted flexibility in resting time. We provide them escort around the premises. The teleworking and remote accesses are part of our daily work, and this happens with our colleague Dalia Freifer. I don't know if you know her. She's a well-known journalist, and she's totally blind. And we provide them as well with screen readers. As for people who are hearing impaired, we interview them in the presence of specialists. We provide them as well all type of accessibilities in terms of work tools. As for the physically challenged people, we have a workplace that is accessible everywhere. And this accessibility is assessed by NGOs like LPHU. I don't know if there are people around here from it. They do a regular assessment for our premises to see if they meet the needed standards. And of course, the escort around the premises, additional time for task completion, and we have as well provided our colleagues with wheeled walkers that are top-notch and that can meet their daily need in order to replace their old equipment. And we have as well 3 colleagues with mental challenges. And these particular colleagues, we capitalize on their abilities. We see how much they can give us, and we allocate tasks for them according to these abilities. We set realistic expectations while doing any kind of assessment and evaluation. And we show them that we welcome all types of diversities in our workplace. So I will go very quickly on these slides. Please, it turned black again. So here you see that we provide equal remuneration. We do believe that equal remuneration for work of equal value as per the ILO, and we are applying this internally. We advocate the Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination and against women and other entities, as well as the Convention on the Right of People with Disabilities that was mentioned previously. And as I have said, we pay equal wages to all our colleagues based on the nature of the work performed. We as well provide all our colleagues with equal benefits. This goes without saying. We don't need to talk about equal benefits for people with iron will or other colleagues, because they are considered as full-fledged colleagues with full rights. So yet, we discriminate them positively with the special flexibility that we provide them with in terms of flexibility in teleworking and flexibility in working hours. Needless to say, and to talk about equal training opportunity benefits, the workplace well-being was tackled already. And here I just would like to mention a few areas where it's very, it's key to have physical accessibility, like the parking spaces, restrooms that were conceived according to the international standards, canteens, ramps for bending entrances, floors and passages. The length is very important. Even the elevators should be conceived in this mindset. Floors and passages, work equipment, systems and services, and the training premises. And the equal career growth opportunity. And we have seen the 3 examples that were mentioned previously, our colleagues who hold managerial positions. And let me tell you what were the many returns of diversity and inclusion. It wasn't always about giving to those people, because what we reaped in terms of fruits internally and in terms of culture, organizational culture, were way much important than what we have given them. So we have established a more diverse workplace. We have reached individual commitment. We have created creativity and team bonding. We created awareness about the rights of people with iron will. We have created corporate, socially responsible individuals. And we were very keen on sharing the success stories of these people to serve as a source of inspiration for everyone. And let us not forget that our employees and all our future colleagues are millennials and the Generation Z. And these people, they need to have purpose, and they need, in order for them to feel accomplished internally and to work with motivation to a certain institution, they need to feel that this institution is reflecting their aspirations and their goals. So this is an additional asset for Alfa to serve as a role model, because it is attracting the best talents that really believe in the last level of the pyramid of Maslow, which is self-accomplishment, and not to stay on the basic needs. So Ralph, the brother of Mark, was here, and I'm very happy to tell you that Mark is one of the talented colleagues at Alfa. He works in the procurement department, and we helped him build the first Lebanese basketball team for hearing impaired people. And we are proud of his success on the personal and professional level. But Mark is not alone. We have so many talents that have succeeded in building a kind of a work and life balance. And this is very important to us. To name a few, Ilyas Kassab, who was here, Mustafa Khairuddin, who is always on the podium in all the Paralympic marathons and other type of sports activities, and Ilyas Kassab, the leader in Jbel Alfa store, who's a Paralympic tennis table champ. We didn't only work internally on this culture. Since 2006, we worked on spreading the culture of the inclusion of people with iron will through our flagship CSR program called Alfa for Life. This CSR program targets, in particular, people with iron will with communication problems. Why communication problems? Because Alfa is a telecom company. So its main mission, its core mission, is to create communication ways between people. So people with communication needs, and specifically children, because children are the most vulnerable segment. Vulnerable does not mean weak. I repeat what have been said previously. And because they are the future. So we worked on them by providing them with vocational and art therapy trainings, because we do believe that when we give these people the right means and the skills, we can really improve their way of communication and showcase talents. And we made sure to highlight success stories, because I do believe, and we do believe at Alfa, that highlighting success stories will serve as a beacon of hope, as I said previously, and a source of inspiration to others to follow. So here you say that since 2006 we have implemented more than 70 initiatives. We have one of our success stories, who's Ali Tlace. I don't know if anyone heard about him. He's an autistic he's a painter and a talented artist with autism. We have provided him with the means to improve his skill and showcase his talent by organizing several international exhibitions. He exhibited among other international artists so far for 9 times during Beirut Art Fair, and he generated money for himself and for the NGO he is representing, which is Lebanese Autism Society, up to $65,000. Vocational training, productivity and inclusion, and employment opportunities. These are the key elements on which we are working. We didn't work only on Ali. We are working on with 7 NGOs in Lebanon, 7 reputable NGOs. But just to showcase a few examples here, for example, the Lebanese School for Blind and Deaf, we have worked, those who have performed wonderfully at the beginning of the event, we have worked on their sculpture skills, and they have so far exhibited 3 times in at the embassy, the French embassy, and raised $40,000. Needless to say that we worked on accessibility in several governmental entities, namely the Ministry of Justice and the Palace of Justice. And we organized the first friendly basketball game for people with iron will in collaboration with Joe Rahal Foundation. We are proud to say that we have contributed in changing the destinies of more than 3,000 people with iron will, and to turn from a digital services provider to a happiness provider. Thank you.